Honestly speaking, like becoming a Muslim, it's the best thing. It's the best thing that's happened to me. It's the best thing, even with the depression, the sadness, the self-loathing, everything. If I wasn't Muslim, honestly speaking, I don't know if how I would have handled all these things. I don't know how I would have been able to overcome all these things. But honestly speaking, I am grateful. I am grateful to Allah for every single thing. Like every single day, I am grateful to Him. Even for the days where it feels like nothing good is happening, I am honestly grateful for this opportunity to be able to become a Muslim, and I pray Allah makes me die a Muslim. Assalamu alaikum guys, this is my first ever official video, and I would like to talk about my journey to Islam. My first ever official video, and I would like to talk about my journey to Islam. My journey to Islam started at the age of 8, alhamdulillah. I come from a very strange religious background, because we're kind of a mixed religion whereby some people are Muslims, some people are Christian, but at the same time, like, people don't exactly practice their religion. It's such a strange household, because like now I've got my parents, and my dad is Muslim and my mom is Christian, and my grandfathers are Muslims and my grandmothers are Christian, which is fine. But growing up, when things like that happen, you don't exactly get serious knowledge of your religion or the religion of your parents or something like that, because everybody's like, you can be anything, any religion, it doesn't matter, like everything is all the same, it's all one, and things like that. Like, and I do understand things from that perspective, but the reality is, like, on the day of judgment, it's not always going to be like that. So my journey from Islam actually started when I was 8. When I was young, I suffered from a lot of mental things. I fell into depression at a very young age. I fell into depression, I think, I don't know, maybe around 6 or something. So when I was young, I was in serious depression. Like, I would want to die, like I would want to kill myself and things like that. It was really bad, and it was really painful for me. It was a very terrible experience going through it, and as a child. And then it was like there was nobody to understand me. I was always like, nobody is getting it, because everybody would look like you and they're like, oh, you're just sick, you're just this, how can you be so sad, how can you have depression and things like that. But the reality is, it's not always like that. And then as I grew up, I realized that, you know, there is a God. I just didn't understand, like, because I would see things like, there was things like God would make me realize, like, I would see things like, I would be like, you know, we've got trees, we've got money, we've got this, we've got a house, we've got everything. Like, yeah, although people make an effort, but in their end, like, because I would see around me, like, two sort of people would make the same effort, but not necessarily it would yield the same result for them. And then it started me thinking, like, okay, yes, I do believe in God, I believe that God does exist and things like that, but what is actually the way to, like, get to God? Because you know I'm tired of all this pain, all this sadness. Like, okay, if I'm having this pain, this sadness, then certainly God has an answer, and there's a reason why God is giving me this pain, this sadness, and things like that. And then that was where I think my journey actually started, from as learning what Islam was about. Not really learning what Islam was about, it was like learning who God was. It was more like, for me, it was always building a relationship with God. So, and because where I grew up, I kind of grew up in a Christian school, with a lot of Christian friends. I didn't have any Muslim friends, honestly speaking, when I was young. It was just that, and in my environment there were Muslims, there were Christians and things like that. But honestly speaking, like, the area I grew up, it's not the best area in terms of religion, this thing, because when you see what people do, you start to like question religion. But then one thing was like, I wanted to be closer to God. I wanted to know, like, okay, there's a God out there. There's certainly a way to communicate with him. There's certainly a way that, to understand why I'm going through so much pain, so much depression, why nobody seems to like understand like what I'm going through. Nobody seems to like listen to what I've got to say. And so I actually started reading about like the religion I was the most closest with, which was Christianity. I would always sit down for like hours and hours. Like, I would read the Bible. I would read so many things like what that had to do with Christianity. I would read it, and then for me it became a realization point, because I was like, I see the Christians and everything, and I see the Bible, and I'm like, these people are not aligning with the Bible. These people are not going with the Bible. Then that must be the same thing for like every religion, like especially for my environment. I'm like, if the Christians are like this and they're doing something totally off the books, they're lying, they're doing all sorts of things, then certainly the Muslims are doing the same thing. Because for us it was like the Muslims and the Christians are no different. And then I was like, certainly then the Muslims are also not following the things by the books. And that thing didn't, so it made me be like, I want to become a better person. I don't want to be based on what society says, okay, this is how you should do, because I don't want to be, the book is saying one thing and you're practicing another thing. And one thing that actually drew me to Islam was like, when learning and studying about Christianity, one thing that came to my mind was, why can't I just worship God? Like, why can't I just be God? Why do I have to go through Jesus? Or why is it three? Like, I could never like truly fathom the understanding of Trinity. And I think this was around the age of 10 or 11 or so. I was so confused, like, why couldn't I? Because when people, because as Christians you grow up with, Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the Son of God. And in my head I was like, in the hand, like, God is still the most powerful, so why don't we worship God? Why do I have to worship his Son? And these questions used to like come to my head, and it just used to baffle me. And then I remember like one day, because when I was young too, I loved reading Wattpad. Like, Wattpad, like, it was one of my favorite apps. It was just, I loved the Wattpad a lot. And then I would go, like, one time I realized on my Wattpad I had like this spiritual book. It was a Muslim that wrote it or something on Wattpad, and then I read it, and then it was, the thing is, like, it's not exactly a spiritual book. It's more about like somebody like telling their story or something like that. And from this thing, it kind of made me understand that Islam is, I think that book kind of made me, and books that followed after them that had to do with Muslim writers, made me fall in love with the teachings of Islam in terms of morals and things like that. Because honestly speaking, to me it made a lot of sense. But for me, it wasn't just about what made sense, it's about what is truly right. And then so it was like, okay, in Islam is talking about worshiping one God, la ilaha illallah. And then I was like, I want to learn that, because for me, I just want to have a communication with God. I just want to understand what it's like to be under God and this thing. Because as when I was going through depression, honestly speaking, as a child, like even throughout this entire period, I was actually still going through depression. One thing that used to come to my mind was, I was like, there's a God out there. God is so powerful. God is so nice. God is everything. But I used to be like, I don't deserve God's love, because I'm not the best of person. I'm not the best of people, and things like that. So I think that thing kind of pushed me to be like, I want to become a better person. I want to be, somebody that deserves to be loved by God, deserves to, for God to have mercy upon. That's what I used to like tell myself. And then so from there on, like I would read like all these Wattpad books and things like that. It made me understand like these basics of Islam, and even from these books I could see like that yes, the same assumption which I made for the Christians and them not following the books, it's kind of so similar for the Muslim, because it was like, I think I was in more shock about the Muslims than I was about like the Christians, because like for us, we never believed like Muslims were terrorists or anything like that. It was never among like our beliefs or anything, but it was more of in terms of like a lot of things. And then I realized that a lot of things, culture had just damaged it. And for me growing up, it was like, okay, my father is a Muslim, my mother is a Christian, but nobody in the house prays 5 times a day. Nobody in the house is actually like a Muslim. Everybody is giving themselves like a certain identification, but it's like nobody is following the religion they claim to be. Because like growing up, I never really saw my father like pray, like offer salat. I never saw it. I never even knew what like salat was. Like even for my sisters and I, we never knew. Like yeah, when we grew up, like for my mom, she would go to church at when we reached like a certain age. I think when we were about 9 or 10 or 11, like she like stopped going to church. She was like, it's not possible to be going every Sunday. It's a bit of a stress and things like that. So it was like at some point it's just like, oh, everybody is like saying, we believe in God, we believe in God, I'm Muslim, I'm Christian, but nobody's really taking like action towards being what they claim to be. And I grew up, I did not know like how to pray as a Muslim or anything like that. I when I and I started fasting Ramadan actually at the age of 8, because I was like, I want to get closer to God, and I want to do anything that can possibly bring me closer to God. Because for me, it's not about the religion, it's not about what people think or what is. For me, it's always about like, I want to know the best way I can get to God, like what is truly like the true way to get to God. Like, do I need to have an intermediary between me and God in terms of God having a son, or does God have to have like 1,000 people or over 100,000 people before I can get to him? And then or can I just talk to God directly in days where I feel sad and in days where I feel very bothered? I know one thing that that used to go around where I grew up, they were like Muhammad and Jesus, for they're like the same thing. For like for Muslims, they have Muhammad. For Christians, we have this and Jesus. But when I started learning and studying about Islam, I found out that a lot of things that are happening in the community that is being said, it's not true. And then I realized that the Muslims don't know their religion, the Christians don't know their religion, each other don't know each other's religion. Like, you guys are all in the same community, you don't know your own religion, you don't know each other's religion, you're making assumptions about each other's religion, and it's not the best thing. And I studied Islam for, I think I studied Islam way shorter than I actually did study Christianity. And at the age of 12, alhamdulillah, I made the decision that I wanted to become a Muslim. And I think I took the charger from my phone in my room. I think I did it like on my 12th birthday or something like that, around there. And this was around the time I actually entered puberty, because I entered puberty at, I think, almost 12. Like, I became a Muslim, I think, like few months after I entered puberty. And but one of the things that was like, I became Muslim, and then I looked and I was like, Muslims are supposed to pray 5 times a day. I don't pray 5 times a day. I don't know how to even pray, talk less of being able to pray 5 times a day. And for me, it felt like I entered an hopeless situation, because I was like, I can never be able to gain Allah's mercy. I can never be able to, become closer to God, because I'm not even doing something I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm not even being a good Muslim at this point, and I just even became a Muslim. I'm so terrible at this thing. And then one thing is, like, I moved to a new school. I moved to a different school, and this school is not exactly religious based. It's more of a Muslim and Christian school. They had prayer place for Muslims to pray. And when I learned about the school, I learned it from a friend who was actually he was a Christian friend, and he was like, oh, you should come to my school and things like that. And I was like, oh, sure, because I couldn't go to a Muslim school. Muslim school was like very far away, and it was like they had no buses or anything. Your parents will have to drop you and pick you up, and it was like, it's far away. I cannot wake up that early because I'm still young, and there's nobody that is going to take me back and forth from school. Like, it's going to drive me every single day for the next 3 years to school. There's nobody. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to the school. So I went to the school. Like, initially I didn't even know there was like any prayer room for Muslims, because it's not something I've ever heard of or even knew about. And when I entered the school, they were like, oh, are you a Muslim? I was like, yeah. They were like, oh, there's a prayer place for Muslims, just go to the other building there they have where Muslims usually go and pray. And honestly speaking, I feel like that was such a blessing from, I would say it's one of the biggest blessings from Allah, because it was God gifting me salah. And the craziest thing was, like, because we're very, very few Muslims in school, especially for the higher education, because we're in high school, so very few people are actually Muslims. And then it was like, in my class we were 4 Muslims. Imagine, like, in the entire school, where how many were, like, in the entire high school we're about 15 Muslims, and in my class were like 4 Muslims, me and 2 other girls, and then there was a guy that was a Muslim. And then I had, like, my Muslim friend, like, every day when we went to school, she would, like, always take me to, like, the prayer room. She would, like, always help me and things like that. And, like, I'm so grateful to Allah for her, because honestly speaking, it's a friendship that I honestly, I'm so grateful for. And then she would always take me to, like, the prayer room. Like, she was the one that recommended the herbs I should use and things like that. And then, like, during Ramadan, she would, like, remind me. She would be like, oh my God, do this, don't forget to pray Tarawih, don't forget to pray Zafir and Witri, do this, do that. Because when I first became a Muslim, there were a lot of things I didn't know. There was nobody to ask, because although it's like, oh, you're coming, your father is Muslim, oh, your grandfathers were Muslim, you should know about Islam, right? But it was like, it was not the case. Honestly speaking, I didn't know much. In terms of what to do, how to be a Muslim, it was like in my house, people would fast Ramadan, but they would never pray. They wouldn't even wake up. They would wake up for Sahur. Nobody would stay up for Fajr. It was like, we're fasting from sunrise to sundown. Nobody's praying. And it's this, even this. And then it's from my friend I learned, because she's a Muslim. She came from a Muslim household. They used to pray together, and then she used to help me. And then I remember one time she was like, is it because of me you started praying? And I was like, yeah, because honestly speaking, I feel like if I didn't meet her, because I was just 12, like, if I didn't meet her, it would have been so much harder for me to, like, know how to pray, because it was like, where will I learn it from? And from there, it was just a journey. And I started praying, alhamdulillah. I started praying 5 times a day. And when I first started praying, there's this thing that used to happen for me during Fajr. whenever I was sleeping and it was time for Fajr, I would hear like the adhan in my ear, which was so crazy for me. And then I would wake up and then I wouldn't hear the adhan, and the adhan would come like few minutes later after I've woken up. And then it used to feel like so strange, because I was like, you know, this is like God waking me up, like wake up for prayer. It's a lot time. And you know, it went on like that for a few months, honestly speaking. You know, I would pray 5 times a day and things like that. And I remember, I think around that time, that was when I started having a social media account and things like that. So it's like, you know, when I started growing up and becoming this thing, I think it was when I turned 13 or so. You know, I made a lot of mistakes, honestly speaking, a lot of mistakes that I regret. And you know, it was like you're making mistakes, and it was like finally you make the biggest one. Like all these mistakes were leading up to it, you saw it, but you know, and then it was like I made this mistake, I made this big sin, and it would like torment me so much. Like I would like have it in my head, it would be like, you've done this thing, you've done that thing, how dare you pray? Like you don't have the right to, you don't deserve. You know, it was something that I used to like tell myself. It got me to the point like whereby, you know, I even stopped praying, because I was like, you know, I don't deserve this thing, you know, I don't deserve to go to paradise, I don't deserve any of that stuff, because I've done this sin, I've done that sin. You know, that's what I used to like tell myself. And you know, I used to fear death so much. I used to be like, you know, I don't want to die, because if I die, I'm going to hellfire. And I'm like, you know, I'm going to go to hellfire, because you know, I've done this, I've done that. You know, I've been a bad person all this time, and even now I've done something even worse. You know, I used to tell myself this, like, and it literally got to my head to the extent that I actually did stop praying. And eventually, like, it was, and I think in that time, you know, in that time I really like, I was already suffering from depression. It felt like things went even down. You felt like I was getting better, and then suddenly it's like I started crashing again. I started like feeling pain. It was like, you know, I would go to school and you know, it would be time for prayer. I would be there, but I wouldn't be praying. It was like, it was a really dark time, honestly speaking, for me. It was such a painful time. Like, I would go for prayer, I would be in the prayer room, I would bow with them or anything, but my head wasn't there, because in the back of my head there was something shouting that you don't deserve to be loved, you don't deserve to be, why are you even here, you don't deserve it, or anything like that. And you know, honestly speaking, Allah is the most merciful. I'm not gonna lie, it's the most merciful. It's hands down, it's something I've learned. Like, no matter what you go through, no matter what you've done, never forget Allah's mercy. Like, that's something I've learned. And during this time, I really went into this thing went bad. Like, you know, my parents knew I used to pray, and then at this point they noticed, they were like, oh, you don't pray anymore. And then they were like, okay. And then it was like, I got really sad, honestly speaking, because my mental health, I don't know, it went really terrible. I couldn't take it anymore. And you know, Allah sent somebody to me, and I don't know, I feel like this person came as a form of like joy, and a form of it came like a form of me going back to Allah. It was like, despite everything you've done, you know, you're in a new situation, you still need God. I know, I was like, you know, I'm in a new situation, I'm going through a new set of emotions. I've been, you know, I can't seem to fathom who in the end I'm going to have to go back to, except to God. And you know, I started praying again, I started offering salat. And I remember the day before Ramadan, and then I was like, you know, I want to end this part of my life. That this was the Ramadan, like a year after when I became Muslim. I was 13. This was basically, I think, my second Ramadan becoming Muslim. You know, I was like, I want to end this thing. You know, this thing has taking me so far away from offering salah. The guilt has entered my heart and my mind, that to the extent I look at myself in the mirror every day, and I'm looking at myself with so much disgust. And I remember taking my phone and I'm like, I'm done with this, I'm over with this, I don't want to do this anymore. And right there and there I stopped, honestly speaking. And honestly speaking, I feel like that's the best decision I've made so far. And honestly speaking, my journey to Islam has continued that way. Every day it's all about just improving, becoming a better Muslim, trying my best to do good. And honestly speaking, when I first became a Muslim, I wasn't a hijabi. I was in a hijabi. I didn't even start wearing the hijab till I was 16. I didn't start learning about the hijab, like trying to fully understand it till I was 15. Because even from my Muslim friend that helped me pray, she wasn't a hijabi. A lot of Muslims I knew weren't exactly hijab. It's if they wore the hijab, they didn't exactly wear it the right way. And my journey to wearing the hijab, that's a whole lot different story. But honestly speaking, what I do want to say to anybody that is a Muslim out there, a new Muslim, a struggling Muslim, a Muslim that has committed whatever sin, honestly speaking, let me tell you something. No matter how terrible a sin is, the only person that can forgive you of that sin is Allah. The only person that can make you feel relieved despite the sin you've committed, it's Allah. The only person that can make you forget, make you forgive yourself for that sin you've committed against yourself, against anybody, against people, is Allah. It's the only person that can truly soften your heart is Allah. And let me tell you something, if you make a sin, if you commit a sin and you're feeling guilt in your heart, let me tell you, it's a blessing from Allah. Ask for forgiveness. Don't tell yourself okay, I'm not meant for this thing, I don't deserve it. Because honestly speaking, if Allah has guided us, then there's nothing in this world that can stop that guidance. So don't ever let anything or anybody take you be you don't deserve to be a Muslim. You don't deserve. Because honestly speaking, even despite the journey, I've had people who have told me continuously you're not a good Muslim, this and that, criticizing and this and judging me. And honestly speaking, I think it's something I've learned to accept, that people are always going to criticize and judge. But I know that there are people out there that they feel sad when they're this. I just want to tell you this: continue with the journey. Honestly speaking, the hardships will come. There are times the iman will be so low, but honestly speaking, it's deen over dunya every single day. Every single day you wake up, make that decision for it to be deen over dunya. Because every single day there's so many things wallahi, being a Muslim, just even the values itself has protected me from I'm some days I'm just on a spree on alhamdulillah, honestly speaking, because I'm there's no amount of alhamdulillah that I can say that will be able to thank Allah enough for the things He's done. And then I'm these are for the things I can see. Now imagine the things I cannot see, the things I am unaware of, things I am blind to. Imagine honestly speaking, this life, it's a journey, it's a test. And it's a test that I'm still going through. This is still my journey to Islam. I'm still on this journey to Islam, and I pray Allah makes me die as a Muslim. I will try my best, inshallah, with the help of Allah, to become a better Muslim every single day. And I know there are days I might regress, but I pray that Allah truly guides me, guides the people around me, guides my friend, my family, guides anybody, honestly speaking, even the strangers, the people I don't know. Because honestly speaking, becoming a Muslim, it's the best thing. It's the best thing that has happened to me. It's the best thing, even with the depression, the sadness, the self-loathing, everything. If I wasn't Muslim, honestly speaking, I don't know if how I would have handled all these things. I don't know how I would have been able to overcome all these things. But honestly speaking, I am grateful. I am grateful to Allah for every single thing. Like every single day, I am grateful to Him. Even for the days where it feels like nothing good is happening, I am honestly grateful for this opportunity to be able to become a Muslim. And I pray Allah makes me die a Muslim, because if I lose Islam, if I lose being a Muslim, then who will I truly be? Who am I truly, honestly speaking? I'm just grateful. And I hope this message like goes out to somebody who needs it. And because being a Muslim comes with a lot of challenges, but in the end, when you know what the reason and the purpose of why you're becoming Muslim, it's worth it 100 times. You want to go through 1,000 times the pain, the suffering, and everything. And I am so grateful, honestly speaking. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.